Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that I painted this portrait of my wife, because I don't make art anymore, but pursuing art as a career was a huge part of my life. I would like to tell you the story of my career as a portrait artist and why I was doomed to fail. This is the Portraiture Paradox. My story starts right about here, when I painted this sailboat at the age of 2, which still hangs on the wall in my parents' bedroom almost 35 years later. Not everyone would understand the significance of this painting, but my mother knew that this was pretty advanced for most preschoolers. My mom was always my biggest fan and kept a lot of my sketchbooks, and I'm thankful for those memories. This is when my grandfather showed me how to draw a face with correct proportions when I was about 4 or 5. It was possibly the exact moment the seed was planted to become a portrait artist. As I grew older, I was constantly drawing people that I saw in magazines, like this image of Kurt Cobain. I drew this in grade 7, and it was also the first drawing that I ever sold. One of my classmates paid me $5 for one just like it. If my dream was a seed, then that was the fertilizer. By high school, I was on my way to photorealism, and that is exactly what I was striving for. A drawing that was so lifelike that you couldn't distinguish it from a photo. I would spend hours and hours on my work, like this image that I drew from a magazine in grade 11. Interestingly enough, I went to college to study digital media arts and animation, instead of a more traditional fine art degree. I'm glad that I did though, because I now work in digital media, but any projects that allowed me to do a portrait like this digital painting from Photoshop class, I was all over it. Although I enjoyed and succeeded at various digital art forms, the program also included life drawing, and honestly, I never felt more at home than I did when I was in life drawing class. I even went on to teach life drawing for several years, and I must admit it's the one thing I do miss greatly. While I was in college, one of my instructors inspired me to get back to fine art, so I drew his portrait. I left college wanting to be a portrait artist. I loved studying faces and finding the stories that they told. I even learned a little bit about face reading, a component to Chinese medicine, to better understand those stories. Here are 2 interesting facts about your face. Number 1, they say until you turn 20, you have the face your mother gave you. After 20 is the face you give yourself, meaning that your face is also impacted by your personality and experiences because it's all muscle, and like all muscles, your face can and will change. The second fact about your face is they say the right side is your mask. It's what you use to hide your emotions. The left side is what you use to show your true emotions. As you can see, I have a lot of dexterity and muscle tone on the right side of my face that's not present on the left. That's because I'm really good at hiding my emotions. It's not healthy, I know. So here's a tip for your Instagram selfies. If you want to appear strong, confident, or powerful, show the right side of your face. If you want to appear more emotionally available, gentle, or friendly, show the left side, as seen in this portrait of my parents, which is getting pretty close to photorealism. Speaking of photorealism, this is probably my masterpiece. It measures over 1 meter tall and took well over 100 hours to complete. This is Stephen. When I met him, I knew I had to draw his portrait. He was a bit confused by the request, but allowed me to put his face on display. Did he love the piece though? Probably not. That brings me to my point. Up until now, every piece I have shown you was done for my own enjoyment and portfolio. That's not to say that I never made any money from art. I was constantly doing shows, selling abstract art, landing the odd portrait commission like this piece. But that is where I found myself severely conflicted. I hated doing portrait commissions. I didn't realize it at the time, but I can honestly say that now. The problem was that I felt obligated to show my subject as they wanted to be seen, and not actually explore who they truly are. Because let's face it, most people wouldn't pay to put that on display. I couldn't quite find a market for my own exploration of interesting and often rugged faces, nor was I able to find enjoyment from creating school photo style portraits like this. It just felt empty and fake and was not what drew me to this art form to begin with. Plus, I wasn't a huge fan of drawing kids either. That was my portraiture paradox. The portraits that I loved to create, no one wanted to pay for, and the portraits that people did want to pay for were painful to get through. Case in point, this is Warren. He lived on the street. Did I care that no one would pay for this? No. I just wanted to study his face and tell the story of his life in a portrait. I also started painting portraits in my late 20s in the hopes of finding more commercial success. But again, this is not your typical portrait painting that I think would have ever been commissioned. This is my nephew, and I painted this for my family and also for me because I loved the image and the story behind it. But as I continued along this path with every commission, I still felt that internal conflict until I had to just stop. And this was the last one I ever painted. It's a bit sad, but I know that I will come back to portrait art. Probably never to the same extent, however, just because I don't have the time to spend 30 to 100 hours on a single piece of art anymore. The question I have to ask myself is, would I ever do another commission? Only with the understanding that I do it my way. No compromise. So maybe not. I once had the chance to do a portrait of Belinda Stronach, and even though it wasn't a commission, I felt a lot of pressure to make her happy, and as odd as it might sound, that really tainted the process for me. The good news is that in preparing my talk, I was inspired to sketch my son. Mostly to say that it's not a sad story, but my love of art goes on. We just have a different relationship now. One with a lot less conflict and an understanding that it's not about money, but about enjoying the process and making art that I can be proud of.